have you ever wondered what your final words are going to be? You know, the things that we say at the end of our lives actually reveal what mattered to us most all along. And when it comes to the end of your life, what will you say? Well, in 1 Kings chapter 2, we're going to unpack David's final charge to Solomon, the call to walk in God's ways, the establishment of Solomon's kingdom through justice, and what true wisdom looks like. And I'll give you one practical action to help build your life on faithful obedience rather than any form of temporary success in this episode of Biblical Unlocks. This show is designed to help build your habit of reading the Bible, understanding the Bible, and applying it in your daily life. If you enjoy episodes like this, please consider following and rating the show. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's get a little bit of context into the chapter. Okay, so 1 Kings chapter 2 records David's final instructions before his death. He tells Solomon to remain strong, walk in God's law, and reminds him that his faithfulness to the covenant is what matters, and that is what will secure the kingdom, not his success or military strength or anything like that. But after David dies, Solomon firmly establishes his reign by dealing with those who threaten to destroy the kingdom, including Adonijah, Joab, and Shimei, while honoring Barzillai's family for their loyalty. So the chapter is actually going to close by declaring that Solomon's kingdom was firmly established. Okay, so let's read verses 1 to 12. Focus here is going to be David's final charge to Solomon. And my question to you is, why does David focus on obedience more than power or success? Verse 1. When David's time to die drew near, he charged his son Solomon, saying, I am about to go the way of all the earth. Be strong and courageous, and keep the charge of the Lord your God, walking in his ways and keeping his statutes, his commandments, his ordinances, and his testimonies, as it is written in the law of Moses, so that you may prosper in all that you do, and wherever you turn. And then the Lord will establish his word that he spoke concerning me. If your heirs take heed to their way, to walk before me in faithfulness with all their heart and with all their soul, there shall not fail you a successor on the throne of Israel. Moreover, you know also what Joab son of Zeruiah did to me, how he dealt with the two commanders of the armies of Israel, Abner son of Ner, and Amasa son of Jether, whom he murdered, retaliating in time of peace for blood that had been shed in war, and putting innocent blood on the belt around my waist and on the sandals on my feet. Act therefore according to your wisdom, but do not let his grey head go down to Sheol in peace. Deal loyally, however, with the sons of Barzillai, the Gileadite, and let them be among those who eat at your table, for with such loyalty they met me when I fled from your brother Absalom. There is also with you Shimei, son of Gera, a Benjaminite from Bahurim, who cursed me with a terrible curse on the day when I went to Mahanaim. But when he came down to meet me at the Jordan, I swore to him by the Lord, I will not put you to death with the sword. Therefore do not hold him guiltless, for you are a wise man. You will know what you ought to do to him, and you must bring his grey head down with blood to Sheol. Then David slept with his ancestors and was buried in the city of David. The time that David reigned over Israel was 40 years. He reigned 7 years in Hebron and 33 years in Jerusalem. So Solomon sat on the throne of his father David, and his kingdom was firmly established. Okay, a few things here. First and foremost, David tells Solomon to be strong and courageous, to keep his commandments. And the reason why is because if you want to build true strength, right, he's handing over his kingdom. You want to build true strength, you need to build it spiritually before you can build it in any other place. And David, you think about David, he spent his entire lifetime winning battle after battle after battle. And yet even as he prepares to die, he knows that Israel's future depends on Solomon's faithfulness to the covenant. Obedience is the foundation upon which every lasting kingdom is built, including the modern kingdoms that we try and build as well. And the second thing is, David mentions people like Joab, Barzillai, and Shimei. And the reason why is because you remember these people and you remember their faithful loyalty and how they confronted evil and how they exercised discernment. And a ruler like David will never ignore their righteousness or their compassion, right? So if we are wise in our leadership, we'll remember that there is both justice and mercy in leadership, and they're all held together under God's wisdom. So this is something that I would remember, right? That because wisdom remembers both justice and mercy, we should reward faithful loyalty and always confront evil wherever we get the opportunity. Okay, let's read verses 13 to 25. Focus here is going to be Adonijah's final rebellion. My question to you is, why do sinful ambitions often return even after appearing defeated? Verse 13. Then Adonijah, son of Haggith, came to Bathsheba, Solomon's mother. She asked, "Do you come peaceably?" He said, "Peaceably." Then he said, "May I have a word with you?" She said, "Go on." He said, "You know that the kingdom was mine, and that all Israel expected me to reign. However, the kingdom has turned about and become my brother's, for it was his from the Lord. And now I have one request to make of you. Do not refuse me." She said to him, "Go on." He said, "Please ask King Solomon, he will not refuse you, to give me Abishag the Shunammite as my wife." Bathsheba said, "Very well, I will speak to the king on your behalf." So Bathsheba went to King Solomon to speak to him on behalf of Adonijah. The king rose to meet her and bowed down before her. Then he sat on his throne, and had a throne brought for the king's mother, and she sat on his right. Then she said, "I have one small request to make of you. Do not refuse me." And the king said to her, "Make your request, my mother, for I will not refuse you." She said, "Let Abishag the Shunammite be given to your brother Adonijah as his wife." King Solomon answered his mother, "And why do you ask Abishag the Shunammite for Adonijah? Ask for him the kingdom as well, for he is my elder brother, and the priest Abiathar and Joab son of Zeruiah are on his side." Then King Solomon swore by the Lord, "So may God do to me, and more also, for Adonijah has devised this scheme at the risk of his life. Now therefore, as the Lord lives, who has established me and placed me on the throne of my father David, and who has made me a house as he promised, today Adonijah shall be put to death." So King Solomon sent Benaiah, son of Jehoiada. He struck him down, and he died. Alright, what just happened there? Why is Adonijah's request for Abishag treated as another one of his attempts to seize the throne? The reason why is, again, this is more, you need some ancient Near East context to understand this, but basically, in the ancient Near East, if you claim a former king's concubine, that symbolized a claim to royal authority, okay? That's why. So what appears to be a quite simple request is actually another effort to gain the kingdom through some form of political manipulation. What's interesting, though, and something we can apply, is how sin often disguises itself as something harmless while pursuing selfish ambition, okay? We need to check, and this is something the church fathers regularly warned us about, is that sinful desires rarely disappear on their own, but they return in subtle forms. So we need to remember that temptation will frequently change its appearance without changing its goal. So we need to check our ambitions. We need to check the words we're saying. We need to check the music we're listening to. We need to check the things we're reading. Otherwise, we're going to be in a situation where sin is going to be present still, but just in a more nefarious, sinister, and less overt form. And Solomon responds decisively, right? Because if you compromise with rebellion, you lead to greater instability. Okay, so Solomon understands something, that God's kingdom cannot be secured by just tolerating ongoing attempts to overthrow the order. Okay, justice is what's going to protect the peace. How's that interesting? Well, in our own lives, if we let sin enter through the front door, it's going to, or even the back door by that logic, it's going to take a place up in your bed. So what's interesting is that we need to deal with sin decisively in the same way Solomon deals with compromise decisively. Okay, let's read verses 26 to 46. Focus here is going to be Solomon establishing the justice in the kingdom. And I want you to notice how Joab and Shimei are judged, while Barzillai's family is going to be dealt with differently. Verse 26, the king said to the priest Abiathar, "Go to Anathoth, to your estate, for you deserve death. But I will not at this time put you to death, because you carried the ark of the Lord God before my father David, and because you shared in all the hardships my father endured." So Solomon banished Abiathar from being priest to the Lord, thus fulfilling the word of the Lord that he had spoken concerning the house of Eli in Shiloh. When the news came to Joab, for Joab had supported Adonijah, though he had not supported Absalom, Joab fled to the tent of the Lord and grasped the horns of the altar. When it was told King Solomon, "Joab has fled to the tent of the Lord and now is beside the altar," Solomon sent Benaiah of Jehoiada, saying, "Go, strike him down." So Benaiah came to the tent of the Lord and said to him, "The king commands, come out." But he said, "No, I will die here." Then Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, "Thus said Joab, and thus he answered me." The king replied to him, "Do as he has said, strike him down and bury him, and thus take away from me and from my father's house the guilt for the blood that Joab shed without cause. The Lord will bring back his bloody deeds on his own head, because without the knowledge of my father David he attacked and killed with the sword 2 men more righteous and better than he, Abner son of Ner, commander of the army of Israel, and Amasa son of Jether, commander of the army of Judah. So shall their blood come back on the head of Joab, and on the head of his descendants forever. But to David, and to his descendants, and to his house, and to his throne there shall be peace from the Lord forevermore." Then Benaiah son of Jehoiada went up and struck him down and killed him, and he was buried at his own house near the wilderness. The king put Benaiah son of Jehoiada over the army in his place, and the king put the priest Zadok in the place of Abiathar. Then the king sent and summoned Shimei, and said to him, "Build yourself a house in Jerusalem and live there, and do not go out from there to any place whatever. For on the day you go out and cross the Wadi Kidron, know for certain that you shall die. Your blood shall be on your own head." And Shimei said to the king, "The sentence is fair, as my lord the king has said, so will your servant do." So Shimei lived in Jerusalem many days. But it happened at the end of 3 years that 2 of Shimei's slaves ran away to King Ashish, son of Makkah of Gath. When it was told Shimei, "Your slaves are in Gath," Shimei arose and saddled a donkey and went to Achish in Gath to search for his slaves. Shimei went and brought his slaves from Gath. When Solomon was told that Shimei had gone from Jerusalem to Gath and returned, the king sent and summoned Shimei and said to him, "Did I not make you swear by the Lord and solemnly adjure you, saying, 'Know for certain that on the day you go out and go to any place whatever, you shall die'? And you said to me, 'The sentence is fair, I accept.' Why then have you not kept your oath to the Lord and the commandment with which I charged you?" The king also said to Shimei, "You know in your own heart all the evil that you did to my father David, so the Lord will bring back your evil on your own head. But King Solomon shall be blessed, and the throne of David shall be established before the Lord forever." Then the king commanded Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and he went out and struck him down, and he died. So the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon. Okay, so Joab and Shimei are judged whilst Barzillai's family is on it. And the reason why is because, again, God remembers every response to his covenant purposes. Joab repeatedly shed innocent blood. Shimei persistently resisted God's anointed king, who was David, while Barzillai faithfully served David during his greatest need. So, the kingdom is established by rewarding faithfulness and confronting rebellion. That's the first thing, and God's judgment is perfectly balanced. Second thing is, the chapter ends by saying, "So the kingdom was established in the hand of Solomon." So, after we have righteousness being upheld, the kingdom's peace is established. The kingdom becomes secure because God's appointed order has been defended. And stability is built through justice and peace and righteousness and obeying, faithful obedience to the covenant. Otherwise, you're going to have an unstable kingdom, even in your own lives as well. Okay, let's see how this chapter fulfills Jesus Christ. So David's final charge and Solomon's establishment of the kingdom ultimately point towards Jesus Christ, because he is the perfect son of David, and unlike Solomon, whose kingdom still depended upon imperfect human wisdom, Christ establishes an everlasting kingdom through his perfect righteousness. He is both perfectly just and perfectly merciful, removing sin through his cross while securing an eternal kingdom that can never be shaken. This is why we read in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 28, that, "Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us show gratitude by which we may offer to God an acceptable worship with reverence and awe." Solomon established a very temporary earthly kingdom. Jesus establishes an eternal kingdom forevermore. Okay, so how can we apply this chapter in our everyday lives? Imagine you were speaking to someone for the last time. Imagine these were my final instructions to someone that I love. What would I want them to remember most? I want you to write that down, because that is what truly matters to you. And I want you to begin living that truth out today. Don't wait till you're dead before you can actually live what truly matters to you. Imagine this is the last thing that you're going to say to anyone, and that is what truly matters to you. That's the first thing. Second thing is, there are going to be temptations that you tolerate in your life. I want you to bring it before God. You do not want to let compromise take root in your life and then dictate all of the other things that are taking place. I want you to remove it and bring it before God in prayer, and take one concrete step this week to remove its influence from your life. Alright, that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. We learned that true strength begins with obedience to God's word, that godly wisdom holds justice and mercy together, that sin often returns in subtle forms if it's left unchecked, that lasting peace is built upon obedience to the covenant and not by compromise, and Solomon ultimately points forward to Jesus Christ, whose kingdom is perfectly established forever. Next time, we're going to go to 1 Kings chapter 3, where Solomon asks God for wisdom instead of wealth or power. We'll explore what true wisdom is and why God delights to give it, and how Christ becomes the wisdom of God for his people. You don't want to miss it. So that's it for this episode of Biblical Unlocks. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to rate the show and follow. It's free, it helps me out a lot, and you can always change your mind later. Otherwise, just have a blessed day. And remember, if you're not in your word, you're in your feelings. Godspeed.